Thank you for joining us. Today we will have a very insightful, very interesting conversation around B Corp within specifically fashion. And I'll start just very briefly by introducing myself. My name is Zane, and I'm founder of Kind Agency, where we work to lead and inspire small, medium enterprises and startups towards a 360 approach to corporate responsibility. On the side, or in addition, I also work with supporting companies in obtaining B Corp certification. That has now become one of the most talked about movements and certifications out there, and we will talk much more about it today with a few bright minds involved within the B Corp movement. And yes, I just maybe wanted to give the word to you guys here and just maybe introduce yourself also a bit, and then we'll just dive into a couple of the discussions and interesting points about this. So whichever feels comfortable to start first.
Okay, happy to go first. My name is Leah, and I'm from Resra, so this is actually like a double role that I'm in here, a little bit co-hosting because the space here is from the store or belongs to the store downstairs, and we're renting it out for events and collaborations, and then also being part of the panel today because we're actually as a store also B Corp certified. And what we're doing is we're a conscious clothing store, but we're much more than that. We're like selling clothes that are produced with respect to the environment and to the people making it, but we're also, or we see ourselves as a way of creating a dialogue with customers on what does it mean to consume and to produce responsibly, and how can we challenge like the very toxic way that our fashion industry is set up at the moment, and how can we challenge those conventions. So it's both like a shop to sell clothes that are produced in a different way and show alternatives are possible, also by extending the life cycle of products, for example, through repairing, but then also, just having talks like today, having dialogues with customers, etc. So happy to be here, thanks.
Stefan, you go first.
Okay, I'm Stefan, and I am the head of impact at B Corps in the Nordics, meaning that I tell people that they should start measuring their company impact, not only focus on their profits when they're talking about if they're successful or not, but actually starting to look at, as you say, in a more holistic way on their success. What is actually success in a modern day business? Is it profit for shareholders, or is it creating impact, positive impact for society and for the whole planet that we actually, we need that at the moment. So that's what I do. I do it in multiple different ways. Number one, I consult. So I help companies fill out the B Impact Assessment, the B Corp tool. For me, it's like, can you fall in love with the tool? I know a lot of people will say, yes, I've dated once before. But then we have this tool in B Lab, and it's a nice tool. It's one of those nice tools that's called the B Impact Assessment. And it looks at your entire impact as a company. I help companies fill out the B Impact Assessment. I help other consultants and other people working in companies that are interested in becoming B Corp or filling out the B Impact Assessment to get familiar with the B Impact Assessment. And then of course I also go out and about and spread the word about B Corp and why it's so cool and so super nice. So yeah, and we are seeing a lot of great interest right now in just to give a short update on how the perspective and landscape is here in Denmark. We have 45 companies that are now part of the movement. Total, we just crossed the 5,000 mark companies in end of May, some point in May, and now we are like 5,134 companies that are certified. So we're growing like exponentially. We're trying to just keep up with all of the demands that we're having. Also in Denmark, we have, just to give you a short insight on what's happening, what can we look forward to, we have 45 Danish companies. We have 38 companies that has filled out the B Impact Assessment and has sent it in for verification. So hopefully we can look into becoming twice the size in just a very short time.
super exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess that you are.
That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So my name is Frederick. I am the lucky co-owner and CEO of the Danish brand Dieu Denier or Dieu Denier. So we do a lot of things. One of the things that we are mostly known for is our hosiery, but we do a variety of inner layer products for women. My wife started the company back in 2012, which is 10 years ago. So we have our anniversary this year. It's gonna be a celebration. But yeah, so we do inner layer products, and our mission as a brand is basically to create societal value, to create a positive impact on our environment, and we basically exist to challenge the common ways of both hosiery production, modern hosiery production, and also fashion or textile production in general. So we go about this in a way that enables us to really reduce our impact when you compare us to conventional products. For example, of course, we use recycled materials. We produce in factories that are basically low waste or no waste factories that has implemented systems that can enable them to reduce the emissions and clean the water, use it again, and so on and so on. So we really try to challenge the ways of a category that is inherently really bad. It's known for its overproduction, mass consumption of these types of products. We even have built-in obsolescence and so on and so on. So it's a big task, but we believe in the consumer voting with their wallets, and that's really our mission, is to get as many consumers and also stores like Res to choose our products or products like ours over conventional products. Yeah. And I've really been looking forward to today, because this is really the future of the fashion industry, I believe, and it's an important discussion that we're having today.
Great, and maybe just to kick off the conversation, I wanted to turn to you, Stefan, and maybe you can share some insights from your perspective. So, because B Corp, as you mentioned, is growing exponentially, so maybe what really is within the B Corp universe?
I think basically when you look at B Corp, I think people are at the moment looking at a certification, which is not necessarily all of it, but it is of course a certification, and it is within textile and it certification and the it certification. But like you participated in a podcast, this is a panel debate about the new it certification out there. But I just want to underline that is only one part of what the B Corp movement really is, because now I say movement. You've probably also heard about a legal commitment, legal framework, a new structure for companies and so forth. So basically I just want to underline that while of course B Corp is a certification, it is a standard that you can verify and live up to. Before that, it is a legal structure, or a legal, in Denmark it's a legal commitment, saying that we legally commit ourselves not only to have a triple bottom line, saying within our operations we want to have as small a negative impact as possible on society and on our workers and on the planet, but we're actually committing, or B Corps are committing, to having a dual purpose. So one thing is of course to drive operations, drive trade with something, could be anything, and then have a significant positive impact on society and the planet as a whole, which I think is basically the foundation of why this is actually groundbreaking B Corp. I think the certification, yes, that's great, but we are already aware of different certification, product certification. The entire B Corp certification is basically just a set of different aspects of, the company where there are already certifications, more well-known certifications. But what makes us different is, number one, the legal commitment. Then we have the certification, and then I think what also differs us from other certifications or whatever is the fact that this is actually a movement. So this is company that, number one, commits to say we want to measure our success in a different way. We don't want to measure our success in financial terms as we have been used to, because we've been told to, because we've been taught to, but we want to measure our success in what kind of positive impact can we actually create with our company. It's basically just going down to the root, saying why have a company? Because we want to solve a problem that we've faced in the society in some way. I think it's just going back to these roots and then saying we are successful because we have a significant positive impact on society. And then it can be a fragment of society. And then we want to also join other companies, like-minded companies, in solving greater challenges. So I think this is, if you want to become B Corp certified, that's really great. And if you're interested in the certification, it's great. I just think that you need to know as well, this is a legal commitment for creating significant positive impact for society and the planet. And then also, it is also a promise to the world that you want to be a part of a movement that also drives other initiatives, just besides your running your own business, but also going down to the EU to say, well, we need to have better standards for this. Going down, we have this great initiative started, among other places, here in Copenhagen. It's called the B Corp Beauty Coalition, which is B Corps within the beauty industry that's come together across, I think we have 4 different continents represented in this beauty coalition that's come together and said, we want to drive changes. We want to create more strict standards within the beauty industry. Because small company, Rudolf Kjær, Scandinavisk are the Danish, and Kaffe Bueno are the Danish representatives in this. They're all quite small companies. They couldn't do, shit about anything, about driving regulations themselves, because they're small companies. They're the S and the SMEs. But when they go together, they can really raise their voice. And I think that's the beauty part of it. That really makes B Corp different from other certifications, other standards. This is a legal commitment, and this is a movement first and foremost. And then we have the certifications so we can prove that these companies that are actually within the movement live up to a specific standard. But no, I'm not going to say that. But yeah, I think that's. I just want to underline that the movement and the legal commitment is also a part of B Corp. So when you are calling it a certification, it's not wrong, but it's just not everything about B Corp. It's a whole world.
Exactly. Yeah, I completely agree. So there's a lot of talk about B Corp as a certification, and you know, it is, as you say, a certification, but it's so much more. And for us, the reason why we got into the B Corp movement in the first place was really that we've been working as the what do you call it, advocates of a better way of doing a certain thing in a certain industry, and we've done bits and pieces, and then we can reduce our emission here, and we can do all these things, and we can get this certification for our yarn or the process or whatever. And then when we got to know the B Corp movement, and also the B Corp assessment in particular, and started using it as a tool. It is a great tool. It's a great tool to get you going on a journey, or at least to figure out what are we doing, what are the groundworks here, and how can we really evolve from here, and how can we take the next steps and prioritize and so on. And then of course when you really get to know the movement, then you want to be a part of it, because it is really a mindset or a different way of doing business. It's we were getting sick and tired of these stories about fashion brands making it big time financially, and they were just, but look at how they get there, and that was really frustrating, and we felt alone with that, at least in the start, or that's of course a good thing that now that we are many more that are really trying to figure out a better way. But that's really what got us into the B Corp movement in the first place. So for us, of course, it's not just a certification. It's much more, and also you get inspired from companies, brands that are doing completely different things than you are, and that's a great source for inspiration, I think.
Same for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from the beginning when we were thinking like, do we want to get B Corp certified, and why do we want to get B Corp certified? It's definitely not been to only get the stamp like on the door, and I actually must also say we're really bad at getting the stamp on the door. We are certified since September, October last year, 2021, and we still haven't managed to get a big sign on our doors, so
Same
we're really behind. But we have a tiny little wood piece out there now in our shop windows at least. So what I wanted to say is really like for us the motivation has also to be in a community where we can learn from each other and where we can like get inspiration, as you were saying. But also as a small company, it is difficult to keep up with all the discussions that are happening in the sustainability agenda or in corporate sustainability. There's so many new discussions on like science-based targets, on net zero, on like all these things that it is important to be surrounded by like-minded and ambitious companies that like drive you further, where you can also learn from like how do you do that. And on our side we still have a lot of questions like how can we be more rigorous in our supplier screening, for example, or how can we like impose our like standards along our supply chain in a more structured way, because we do we're a purpose-driven company and we have always been. So from our mission statement we were always a B Corp, but then like in terms of actually providing all the documentation that is needing and like having it like in a more systematic approach, that is where we're struggling, and I think where we're still hoping also to learn from others, like how can you work around these things, like the limited resources, the limited like hours that you can dedicate to these topics and still staying on top of the agenda in terms of sustainability and social standards.
I have a question here to add. So how come, like, I'm just always very curious, like you are a small company, but still that you manage to prioritize those type of things, and just also with the limited set of resources, how did you manage to prioritize B Corp and really set it as a goal and really go for it despite all of the challenging aspects and all the documentation that is required?
I mean, I must admit, we did not always prioritize it as much as we wanted to in the beginning. I think in the beginning we were quite enthusiastic. We're like, yes, let's do it. And then you start, and then you see like, okay, question mark here, like it is difficult. Like, and then, I mean, Stefan, you've like witnessed our process. I think we've been maybe the slowest B Corp in Denmark. I don't know, but our certification process was 2 years almost, I think, from starting point when we, signed up on the platform and we started filling in the questionnaire, and then like it's been both very slow on our side, but of course also since there is such a huge interest at the moment in getting certified, there was at some point also a waiting list or a queue of people that want to get the impact assessment done. So it has been a major struggle for us to prioritize it. I think it came a bit in waves. Like moments where we were enthusiastic, dedicating time to it, and then there were slow periods where like everything that was happening on the shop floor had priority. Because in the end, we're still like a small business. Like we really depend on keeping our daily operations running, and that is still, I think, one of our major struggles is to like how to balance that, like how to dedicate enough hours to those things that don't immediately pay off, because it's not like this translates into profit like from one day to the other, and this is also not our objective with that, right? But being a small company of course means that you have very limited financial and human resources, so we are still in the struggle of like everyday survival in a way, and then really trying to do our best where we can. And it's also been fun in a way. I've been doing the assessment, so of course on a personal learning curve I was also, you know, getting something out of that and feeling like, hey, this is great. Like I'm surrounded like by people that are passionate about the same topics than I am. Like opening new doors, like being at some networking events. So I think those community events are the ones where you feel like, okay, it's worth it, you know? And then you're sitting alone at your desk and other things are really urgent and everyone is screaming, and then you're like, okay, like shit, I have to do daily business and then get back to the B Corp later.
Yeah, I agree. It's as a small company that, you know, has to really pay a lot of attention to what you prioritize in your daily operations and so on and so on. It's an important question to ask. You know, how do you become B Corp certified? What does it take to get there? You know, we were completely blue-eyed when we, you know, went into the assessment tool and just filled out everything that we had, and then we, you know, had a lot of open questions. But those are really also the most exciting questions, because they force you to really try to, you know, think about what are you doing here, what is your position on this and that, and you know, the tool is really asking great questions to, you know, look into every single corner of the company. Also a lot of questions that may be irrelevant now, but in the future, or as you grow as a company, or maybe you go in other directions and so on, then the questions has been asked already, and you have taken your position on the questions, and I think that's where you really learn a lot as a company. We're a small company, you know. We had to prioritize we have to prioritize still every single, not minute, but hour a day, but I think you get so much out of doing the assessment, and also, you know, finally also, or at the end also, getting the B Corp plaque on your window, or at least a small figure, and that's really, you know, you have your work structured somewhat, you know, in the tool, and also, you know, in your mind as a company, and you get this operational or organizational mindset around, you know, we have to achieve this, and we have to figure out how to do it, and, you know, it's kind of like a team building exercise as well. So. And then at the end you have this structured way of thinking about your company, and all all the things you do, all the different tasks, and the different certifications, and the different whatever, down to the smallest level, and also it also sets a tone for how do you want to be as a company, and you vocalize that. So I think that's really a great thing, and something you benefit not just when you get the certification or become part of the movement, but also many years from then.
Yeah, I think that's also for us being the case, that it opened up new ways of communicating with our suppliers, because we had always been engaged in a dialogue about their social and environmental standards, because that's just been key for us always. But to do it in a bit more of a systematic approach, like thinking about what are the questions that we want to send out to all of them, you know, like we want to have answers on this, and this from all of you, and those sorts of things, where we had it maybe more in an informal way before, where we had a phone call, and, you know, we had like a nice chat, and we were exchanging ideas on how do you do, what are your certifications, etc. But now I felt it was really like it was just really good also in the process then to see, okay, where do we maybe do it, but not in a way yet that is systemized enough to actually give us a score as a B Corp, and how can we now do it more more systematically and document it also in a better way. And I think that is that also what made it maybe take so long in the end, is that we were seeing, okay, we should be doing that, and then we like established some sort of procedure for it, and then we tried it out, or we sent out those emails, and we were ready for responses and all that. So it's been a bit of a like already benefiting on the way of getting certified.
Yeah, and also just when speaking about resources, I think it's important for me to mention that it is, of course, the B impact not of course, but the B impact assessment is 100% free. So what we're seeing is also that companies, the most resources that they spend is human power, which is also what is companies have the least of, basically. So it's really, it does need to have like this strong prioritization from the company itself to go through the B impact assessment. What I like personally, and I'm also hired to like the B impact assessment, of course, but I also have a personal connection to this, and I also like the fact that it's not only a measurement tool, because one thing is that you can measure your impact across the company. That is really great, and that you can do it for free. Well, that's even better. But I think the best part is that you actually also can learn from what can you actually do then if you don't do it at the moment. So we have in there, we have best practice guides. We have like, what is the question behind the question? What kind of calculations can you make for in order for you to structure this? So I think it's one thing is, of course, it's a measurement tool. You can get a benchmark and you can compare yourself to how do I perform when we compare to other companies that looks like us. But then you can also go in and say, okay, but if we want to perform better, we can then just have a look at the question saying, well, we're answering this right now, but we only need to formalize the way that we're doing, just as you said, that when having a dialogue with the suppliers, you already have the dialogue. You now just need to have it formalized or structured in another way, so you can actually also then show the data afterwards and not just say, well, we talked to them. So I think that is also a realization that companies come to. Okay, but there's not that much we need to do in order for us to be able to prove this specific impact also to peers, which I really like, this learning journey that you also can partake when filling out the B impact assessment.
One thing that maybe I could add on top of what you're saying, I heard it in one of the many conversations happening right now about B Corp, is that it was mentioned that when you within a company formalize something and you have a document for it, then everyone can be on the same note, on the same level, because sometimes things get lost within the daily routines and so on and so on. But once you have it there and in front of everyone, then you truly have a guide, and that's how you can just better operate, so that there's no, confusion in the end of the day, and therefore the whole, the way the company is operating is more aligned and more stronger and more united, which is of course, and I also from my experience completely second that it shows so much inspiration, and I believe that we can all hear from you that's also something that you have gained quite a lot, because there is always space for improvement. But maybe also just touching upon a bit more on the benefits, like how about your teams and the companies, because you are a small company, so I imagine that it was quite a team exercise, as you said, right? Was it a similar case also for you, for your company?
I don't know, it's been maybe more one woman exercise. I must say, I've definitely been by far the one who dedicated most time and hours into that. I think for us it's really hard because we have a lot of people that work part-time, so they're here once a week, and you can't expect someone who's here, just let's say 10 hours a week to be involved in those processes. I would have loved that, and that was my initial starting point. I was like, it can be this team growing exercise, and then we can have someone who's taking more responsibility on how can we make our web shop more sustainable and set targets and goals for both customer experience, GDPR compliance, but also maybe the environmental impact and so on. But yeah, so in that regard, I've definitely had discussions with colleagues, like the colleague who's doing our web services, to engage him in the dialogue, but it's not been the whole team at all stages because of the way our company is set up. We do have too few people that are here on a full-time basis, or even 20-30 hours basis to make it a proper team exercise. But I think I would have loved that. I would have loved to have more people around me that critically look at what I'm doing and also support the process in the best way possible. But I always had the backing and the support of our founder and owner of the store, so that of course also makes things a lot easier if you have the backing from the top.
Yeah, but for us we also have part-time workers, but still the core of the company, 3 people, 3.5 persons were participating big time, and yeah, so for us it was really a team exercise, and also, you know, the more people that have the knowledge, the easier it is to involve, you know, when you recruit or new staff, and also tell the story about, you know, B Corp and the company and so on and so on. So, but of course, if you're the only one, you know, who has the time actually to fill it out, but still you can really share the knowledge, and as you go along, I could imagine that you could still give pointers and, you know, involve people and tell the story about how and why and so on and so on.
Yeah, so definitely staff meetings, for example.
Yeah.
I did share, you know, what is the status quo, like
Yeah.
how, like where are the categories where we maybe doing really great, and where are our weak spots, or what am I working right now. So I did try to be as transparent as possible, and like engage the team in the dialogue, and also like encourage them to give inputs. But you know, like impact assessment is not maybe the tool that everyone feels like, okay, let me just log onto it and see, even though I'm happy to provide the login data to anyone from my team, obviously, but again, limited resources, and yeah.
But also just because to give a bit of context, so B Corp impact assessment is structured within 5 impact areas, and in overall it can include more than 300 questions. So it's quite a voluminous process, but also just which has been the most difficult aspects and challenging aspects for you that I'm sure that you've learned the most, and then maybe Stefan, you could comment from your perspective what you've been noticing within companies within fashion industry, what have been the trickier parts.
Yeah, for us it's the most challenging thing has been to really get the data from our you know, partners and our suppliers and so on and so on. We did already, before we went into the assessment part of the B Corp certification or movement, or we had a lot of data, but when you have to prove it, you know, the impact or how you reduce impact for us, it's a lot about the environmental side of things, but also, you know, the ethical issues of fashion production and so on. So for us, it was really, you know, getting the correct data and handling it, and being able to provide that data to B Lab and have them assess the data. It's been a great learning experience. It's been tough. It's super tough. I'm not here to, you know, tell everyone that this is just like eating a piece of pie. It's hard, and you have to engage in discussions and dialogue with your suppliers, and it's not always, you know, just fun and games when you talk to your suppliers, because sometimes you find out when you want them to provide the data, you find out this is not the supplier that I want to work with, and then you have a tough conversation, right? So either you try to figure out how can we go about this, and how can we make this a match? How can they, you know, become the supplier that can provide products for your company, or otherwise you have to let them go and you're not a match. But and that's also so that's been the most challenging thing, really. And also actually after we got we did the assessment, it's been the continuous dialogue about these data points and so on. That's been the most challenging thing. It's but once you get it established, then you have that like as a red line that you can always find, you know, build the dialogue from. So yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, I totally agree with that point of like getting the data. It's the toughest. It was at least the same for us. I think in the impact categories where we score the highest, which is the environmental and the social impact, meaning like environmental and social impact along the supply chain of the products that we're offering in store. It was just hard to make the exact calculations because you need to provide like the percentage of the products that are certified with a like independent third-party certification. So in our case, that would be the Global Organic Textile Standard or Fair Trade in the social impact category, or companies that are part of the Fairware Foundation, etc. So we do have a lot of products that have the certifications that are recognized. But then to look into all the products that we're having and all the different brands, because we work with more than 30 different brands, and it's not like the certifications are brand certifications, they are product certifications, meaning that those brands, they might have like some products that are got certified in their entire supply chain, and then they have others that are made from, let's say, so-called dead stock materials or from some recycled materials or whatever that are not natural fibers, therefore have other certifications. So it was so tough. Like we have small quantities. Like we have, sometimes we order a t-shirt, like one t-shirt in 4 different sizes, and yet we have to look into that one t-shirt and what certifications does it have. So it's just been like, oh, so much time for so little products in the end, or like so small quantities. So I think being a retail shop that is that small and yet has such a big product assortment, getting the data was very tough.
Yeah, well, I think in general, what we see in the textile industry, we have like, so basically for the whole textile industry, when touching upon the different areas in the B impact assessment, there's a lot of opportunities for textile companies to score better. You score points when you're filling out the B impact assessment, and that's simply because the textile industry is involved with basically everything that's wrong with the world at the moment. So when we see that in the general, so the companies that are interested in becoming B Corp at the moment and are filling out this B impact assessment, they are just as normal company that are filling out in the Nordics, that are filling out the B impact assessment. They're looking at, when they talk about sustainability or responsibility or whatever, they talk environment. They don't talk about what's happening on the social side on the supply chain, for example. A lot of the textile companies that are filling out the B impact assessment, they are brands, so they don't have their own production, meaning that it's all happening in their supply chain, and they don't look out for the payment of the workers in their supply chain. Some of them do, of course. A lot of them that are now B Corp certified do, of course. We are also launching initiatives in the future that will be looking much more into the wage side, ensuring fair wages in the entire value chain, supply chain, for the products that you're making or having someone else make. But generally, we are looking at where are Nordic textile companies underperforming. Definitely within the community section. We don't have the traditions in the Nordic countries. We have a strong state and strong governments that are helping the workers, so I don't think we have that same mindset as they do in other places of the world. We don't engage in society as much as other companies, if you look in a global perspective. Another thing is that when you're looking at, and that's the same again, so I think sometimes also each industry are saying we are a very unique industry. No industry is just like ours. Textile is the same. You can say, I can say this for every Nordic, or this is a general Nordic perspective. We are lacking behind on diversity measurements, not necessarily because we are not 50-50 men and women, but because that the managers are still called Lars, the CEOs are still called Lars, the board of directors are still called Lars. They're men, everyone. I have this one case where I went out to a company. They said we're really high performing on diversity. We have more than 50% of the company is female. And great. And then what about managers? And then 25%. And okay, but what about the CXO level? And then we have 1, and then on the board of directors 0. So they're like basically when you're looking at it more going into detail, they're really bad performing in diversity. They don't have any structures in place for hiring processes. Basically, they don't have any structures or strategies for becoming more diverse. They don't track. Almost 0 companies track ownership among supply chains to see what kind of suppliers and ownerships are we actually collaborating with in the broader perspective. Also engaging in local communities. As you're doing a great job here, saying how can we actually involve the local community here where we are physically present to then have panel debates, have discussions, just engaging in this local society. I think these are the points or areas at least where we are at the moment underperforming. We're really good at environment. At least in some perspective, we're really good in environment, but I think we're just totally blind for this social side and this social aspect, this community aspect of what it is. And I think what we see for the companies that are B Corp movement is still quite young here in the Nordics, but some of our older B Corps are really looking into how can we actually engage in the local community, and that is what we're seeing that really drives value for the workers. Saying that, well, I really do appreciate that instead of having my daughter's handball club, Skagerak has this furniture company, has this these company days where people can have paid time off to do stuff that they otherwise would do in their spare time. So one of them is doing her kids, accounting in the local handball club. And she can do that saying, well, I'm going to stay at home now today and just do this accounting instead. I think that also is something that drives a lot of value, something that we are not necessarily looking into in in broad terms, neither in textiles, neither in the general terms. And then, of course, as you say, getting specific data points, also in environment. So maybe you can have the GOT certification on all of your products, but you have 0 data. Basically, you have this certification, but you don't know anything else. Basically, so how can you then actually dive into your supply chain and then also get data on your environmental performance besides that GOT certifications, where you know that, this means organic and then something about workers' right, but we don't really know about anything of those 2 perspectives. So also generate data. We don't have that in place at the moment. So a lot of things are.
No, but there should be a lot of things, and what I'm sure that many of us have heard, that B Corp is often referred as an umbrella, under which, also as you were saying, under which a lot of other information would be then placed. Do you have something to comment? Like, do you actually see it as maybe one place where you can then just gather and structure things? I think we've already been touching about it, but maybe it was the fact that you did not necessarily see it like that in the beginning, and then somehow through the process you started picking it up, and does that resonate?
Yeah, ideally I think it can serve as a sort of like a management tool almost, right? Like where you also like set your targets, because there's also this option that you can set, okay, we're not here yet, but we would like to be here in 1 year or in 6 months or whatever. So it can definitely serve or work that way. Again, I think on our side right now, it is like, ideally we would use it that way, and we would hope so, but it is like, it easily gets forgotten also, right? Like you have your daily operations and then you don't think about like, oh, let me log onto the platform and like add all the information that we just gathered now. But I would really hope for us to incorporate that new way of how we gather information, how we store it, how we set the targets and improve along the way. So future wish list.
Yeah, ideally you would do that, right? But still you have, the mindset with you in every decision you make, and I believe that's really, ideally you continuously provide new data and add in new data. I bet that's not how most small companies work. For us, at least, it's more, working with this mindset, making decisions, you know, that are formed or based by all the questions we've answered and the reflections that went into it, also based on the data and, you know, the learnings that we got from going through the assessment. And then at some point you have to, you know, structure your adding in data somehow, and for us, we're trying, you know, at least that's what we've planned, is that we want to look at it at least once half a year to add in new data. We have, you know, based on the assessment, we, you know, made all these data sheets, Excel sheets, and so on with all our calculations and formulas and everything. And you know, we add in data for every collection into these sheets. You know, it could be, you know, what is this collection or the products this season. We work seasonless, so it's not changing a lot, but you know, we add in new product categories and so on and so on. How does our certifications evolve when we make new choices? How is the material consumption? What is the fractions we use, and how much, and what is the impact of the negative impact of the choices that we make? So we have, you know, the setup ready, because we had to have that ready to get through the assessment. So we're working with all these different data sheets and so on continuously, and then we add it into the assessment every once in a while. That is at least the plan. So yeah, now we just talked, and I don't even remember the question. Sorry, but yeah.
A lot of data points to be collected within B Corp for sure. But anything to add from your side, like more that it's an umbrella?
Well, it is an umbrella. As I think in the introduction, I've said a lot. So, but now I think I briefly touched upon in the introduction that we have, like, in the B impact assessment, in the different categories, we have like places where this is aligned with, and this is aligned with this certification or this standard. So if you're working with different standards, different certifications, they fit in different places in the B impact assessment. We measure it in two different ways. So we measure it in both the operations, looking at, of course, you have an impact, a daily impact. So how do you work on making that as positive as possible? That's the one part, and that's of course requires one part of structure. This is all about supplier screening, supplier code of conduct, supplier evaluations, but also just what kind of lighting do you have in your offices and facilities. Also about how do you create career development opportunities for employees? How do you measure success? Is there anyone hired in the company with? So all the structures that you have to have in place, and we call that operational impact. Then we have the impact business models, which is either the company design. So you've designed this company to create a specific positive impact that goes above and beyond industry standards to create a specific positive impact. So that could be designing it so you can actually create workplaces for people that have chronic barriers to the labor market, but also looking at supply chain. What kind of certifications do you have on your supply chain? Are you working with fair trade? Are you working with direct trade? Are you working with SAH 8000, which sometimes also helps you to be able to prove that you're doing these kinds of things? We're also looking on the different products. Does the product have a GOT certification? Is it made of dead stock? Does it have a TRS certification, etc., etc.? So we are also looking at the specific product instead, and all of these places. And if when you're also working with Sustainable Targets Initiative, then we also have in the operations. They fit in and are aligned with those kind of things. So in that term, it is like this huge umbrella. And of course, companies does not have everything in place at once. So this is also a continuous learning platform where you can say, well, next time, the next round that we will have on this B impact assessment should maybe be us having a look at how do we then start gathering data from our suppliers? How do we then start collecting the specific data that we could have on the environment due to the products, due to the freight that we have, due to this, our distributions? So also this is continuous umbrella management platform, as you so beautifully said, Leah, that this is also a way of you managing your impact, looking at the different perspective without being just blind on just one side, saying we look at product and we look at environment, and that's just very one-sided.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Just, I think we are seeing some synergies, and I'm sure that you're happy to hear that the B Corp certified company is also using the right terminology and all the right
Yes.
words. So that's got a good, well done job done. But any last thoughts, ideas? Well, of course, there's a lot to uncover within B Corp.
Yeah, if you as a company, is interested in the B Corp movement, then you should definitely try to check out the assessment tool. And just it's as Stefan said, it's free, and it's even could be characterized as a management tool, and but still you just you get a lot for free. So as a company, log into the tool and just look at the questions, look at the knowledge base. It has a lot of depth and links to so if you as a brand is has this maybe not, maybe we don't know, and it's a lot of work and so on, just log in and check it out. And that's how I got started, and I had a little wine one Saturday, and then I just logged in, and then hey, this is great, and I just began filling out, and then the next day I was just like, what is this? I need to fill it all out again. But still, it's a great way of just starting or just figuring out if it's something for you as a company, and for us at least, we can only talk positively about it.
Yeah, I think for us it's also just, it's one way forward, but I think it's not the only way. And I think it's really like, also as you say, like the opportunity to be engaged in a network, and a network that is also pushing for like political change, legislative change. I think that is very much needed in the textile industry. So I'm super happy also that there is finally now the EU strategy for sustainable textiles, and I think that is only this is only happening also because there is this corporate push at the same time, like saying like change has to happen on all sorts of levels. So yeah, I feel like it's one element that is very much needed in the agenda of change, but I think we should also stay engaged also in the broader discussions, and use all sorts of channels of getting out there, and that's what we're also hoping, of course, to do today. Yeah.
And also as a consumer, B Corp is one way of figuring out if you want to buy a brand or clothing from a brand. But there are many ways. But at least this is a stamp that you have to know as a consumer, and you have to know the depth of the certification, despite it's also being or it is a movement, but there's a lot of work, and there's a lot of proof behind B Corps. You can't just become B Corp. That's an important factor in this. You have to put in the hours, and you have to have to figure out, or at least you have to be aware of the impact you have as a company, and you have to be able to provide proof. And that's really as a consumer. After we certified and went through the assessment and so on, I've been, I have the deepest respect for B Corps, and then for me it's an important way of looking at brands and deciding whether this is for me or not. So on a personal note, that's also something I use when I am shopping and so on. Yeah. So.
Great. Okay, then thank you very much for joining. Awesome. Thank you very much for the insight.